Well, hi, Katie. Welcome to the Author Revolution podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Now, I spoke in the introduction a little bit about how you came into my sphere and caught my attention, obviously at InkersCon. I was just wondering if you'd explain a little bit more, though, to my audience about who you are, like what your author journey has been like, and how you kind of came to that perspective of being an advocate for selling direct. I know a
Yes.
lot in one question. So
No, it's a great question. I love multi-step questions. Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and chat with your audience. I love the angle that you put on things, so this will be
oh,
really
thank you.
fun. So I'm Katie Cross. I live in Montana and I write young adult fantasy books. And I have two kids. They're 7 and 4. They'll be 8 and 5 by the time you're hearing this. And they're amazing. They're rock stars. I have a lot of dogs, probably too many dogs. And I just really, really, really love to play in the mountains. It's like my favorite thing. So we live up by the national forest and we have a great time. And so I get to live in fantasy worlds and then I get to live in an actual world that feels like fantasy because it's just so beautiful up here, which is really cool.
I
So
love
yeah, I
that.
started writing, gosh, like when I was in first grade. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Like I just always was. Like it wasn't this like thing I picked up, it just always was. And eventually through a series of events, I worked as a pediatric registered nurse for a long time. And then I married the military, and that ruined my career. And I didn't have anything but writing. And so I dove into this book called Miss Mabel's School for Girls, led me to self publishing. And here I am almost 10 years later with over 70 books to my name, 55 ish books to my fantasy world, and absolutely loving it. A couple years ago, though, I was frustrated with the Amazon hamster wheel of, you're constantly trying to get a BookBub deal and get it on, and advertising was different then than it was now. Amazon ads were just kind of coming out, and Facebook ads people are still trying to figure out, so it's just different. And I just felt like I was on a hamster wheel. And from the beginning of my career, I always really focused on how can I be an entrepreneur in the publishing world? Like, how can I actually run a business? Because the advice I always got once I started self-publishing was act like this is a business. And so I said, okay, well, how do you do that? So I followed entrepreneurs outside of the publishing industry. I went really far outside the industry, and then I would pull the nuggets that I found into publishing and self-publishing. Well, I didn't feel like I was a business owner. I felt like I was at the whims of all these other retailers and BookBub, which was fine until BookBub stopped loving me. And it just seemed like overnight I stopped getting their deals when I would always get their deals. So that was like, uh-oh, I totally had my fate in someone else's hands. So I decided to start trying out this direct sales thing. It wasn't as popular then as it is now, but it still had traction movement. And I had like a mastermind slash kind of course that I started with, and I set it up. You can find a lot of those now. I set it up through Shopify. So I had a WordPress site at the time, but I decided to set up a separate Shopify one so I could just have really clean data as I ran the Facebook ads, and I could season the pixel a different way, and it just seemed easier that way. So I set up the Shopify store and I started selling. And in a nutshell, because this is like a 3-year story, I got into direct sales the January before COVID hit. And so when COVID hit and Facebook ads like dropped advertisers like it was hot, I was there. And so I just bought up all the bandwidth and was doing thousands of dollars of ads a day and having so much fun, and had my first 6-figure month. And it was all just really cool and all tied together, and it was really fun until it wasn't. And then, it like the post-COVID drop hit, and the model that I had created around direct sales at the time just proved it just wasn't going to work for me specifically. There were other people it was working for, but just the audience, whatever I tried, and we tried everything. My team was trying stuff. I had ad representatives at Facebook I talked to once a week. I mean, we're doing everything. I just couldn't make it work. And basically what happened is I realized I'd become more of a marketer and less of a writer, and I wasn't happy anymore. So I had to completely step back and realign and say, what do I actually want and how can direct sales get me there? And that leads to kind of the last year and a half where I've been focusing solely on direct sales and like the building the dream life that I want to lead, and doing it through my own company. And that's kind of brought us to where we met at InkersCon.
Right, right. Okay, that's super interesting that you said like you weren't happy, you became more of a marketer and less of a writer. So do you think that was like the precipice of like where you needed to kind of put that hat back on and connect with the readers from like like the reader author or even reader perspective, where it was like there was just like that disconnect? Because I know I get that way even sometimes, where it's like I'm more in the entrepreneur or marketer
Mm.
perspective, and then I'm like, why is this not working the way I anticipated? But I found the same thing where it's like you have to kind of go back to that fun and the basis of who you are as a creative. So do you think that was
Yeah.
the really the case?
Yeah. It's really just digging deep and figuring out, what do I really want here? Because I don't want to villainize advertising or marketing, because I love the marketing hat. It's fun, it's creative in its own way. And I still do that. But at the time, I realized I didn't come into this to become a marketer and a Facebook ads expert. Like, some
Yeah.
people love that and do that, but that's not what I specifically wanted. And I realized I don't even really read anymore. Like, I'm hardly writing. So I did lose, like you
Mm.
said, that like reader connection. And so I just had to step back and ask, what do I really want here? Like, what makes me happiest? And for my answer, for me, it was writing. Like, I came into this game for story. And then the second thing was, I loved the response I got from my readers when they connected with my world. Like, I get
Right.
life-changing emails every single day from readers that are like, I was just diagnosed with cancer, or my husband was just in an accident and I'm in the hospital and I'm just reading your books to escape, or I'm a mom and I'm breastfeeding at night and I just need something happy. And, I just
Right.
get all of that because we've all been there. And when I get those emails, I just remember, like, I'm here to put goodness in the world through story. And that is what felt really good to me. And so that's where
Yeah.
I decided to rebuild and structure around that ideal life.
That is so cool. I love that so much. And it's such a, when you think about it, it's like such a different vibe too, versus like I'm here to sell the books that I've written versus I'm here to connect my readers with a place that's happy. I mean, that's so
Yes.
different, right? So
Exactly. Like,
different. That is so
I'm here to
cool.
provide a place for you to escape and find courage again. Like, that's the goodness I'm putting back into the world, and that's how I want to show up every day. Like, this is who I want to be over here. And it is really fun to make money. I like making money is like my third favorite thing. It's one of my favorite things. But I found I wasn't as successful at making money when I was focused on the money versus when I was more focused on my readers. That's when the money came more easily, more profitably.
That's so cool. I love that. Is there anything in specific that now that you're direct, that you do in order to engage those readers so that they know that's what you're there for? Like that's your ethos?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I form a very intentional relationship with my readers through the direct sales. And I do that because I want them to make decisions for me. So I think all of us are aware of like decision fatigue, especially as writers. We're like trying to plot something, we're like, I just can't decide one more decision, right? Like, I just don't want to decide anymore. I felt that way in my company sometimes. Like, I would throw this stuff out, like, they're gonna love this, they're gonna love this. And inevitably, if I loved it, they hated it. And it was so frustrating. Like, gosh, like, no matter how much market research I did, behavior is very different than like what people say. So people will say they'll buy something, but
Right.
behavior is always very different, right? So what I was noticing is I was making assumptions, or I wasn't like asking for behaviors. I was asking for approval, which
Ah,
is
okay.
a very interesting difference, right? So it's
Yeah.
very different when you say, here's a book that I think you'll like, pre-order it, right? Versus,
Yep.
this is a book I think you'll like, and people will be like, cool, that sounds really fun, whatever. They're just trying to make me happy. But like with direct sales, you can throw an idea out and say, hey, if you want to pre-order this at a special price, I'm writing this book, and you can watch the pre-orders. And if you're getting a ton of pre-orders, they probably want the book. And if you're
Yeah.
not, like, interesting, you just refund them and do a different idea. You can't do that at Amazon, right? Like, can you
Sure.
imagine?
Yeah.
So then you let them decide what stories are coming out. And if you don't want to have to go through the hassle of refunding those pre-orders, then you just like try something else. Like, maybe have them vote for it, or just explain, like, I don't care if you don't like the idea. Like, I just want to put out there what you're doing. And I've done that enough with my readers now that I know they're going to be honest with me. Like, their behavior matches more of what they'll say because I've built up trust with them. So
Sure.
I will say to them, "Hey, here are 5 ideas that I'm willing to write for like the next book. Can you vote and let me know which one you want?" And usually, like, they're going to vote the one, like, the votes are usually pretty clear which one they're the most excited about, and then that usually does really, really well because they've made the decision for what I'm writing next, and I've already put out their books I wanna write, so it's not like a struggle for me to write it, and in that way, they make my decisions for my company, and then it turns out people buy when it's what they want, right?
Weird. That's so
I
strange.
know. Can you imagine? So using direct sales, you can get super creative with how can I, one of the questions I ask myself is how can I give this decision away? Like
Got it.
to the buyers, because
Yeah.
then the behavior follows that you want. And that's one way that direct sales has really, in the nitty-gritty, helped me just be more creative and more successful and profitable.
It's almost like you've got a crystal ball too. You're kind of putting it out into the future, letting them like dictate what's coming, even like trend wise. Like if they're
Mhm,
starting to all like the same thing or like the same kind of trope or the same kind of concept, it's like you can almost
mhm.
see like, oh, this is the way the market's trending. Okay, this is cool.
Yes, you
Interesting.
can kind of anticipate. I wrote a novella that people that I was like, this is like a side plot that wasn't resolved. So I wrote a novella on it. And then at the end, because of this novella, there was like this whole story idea born. And I knew my readers would probably like the story idea. And so I just only at the end of the book, so it was only for people who had read it. I just said, hey, I'm gonna do this novel and it's going to be a big one. And I have no idea what its title. I just know its title. I don't know what's going to happen inside, but I know it will explain more of this novella. And I don't even know when it will launch, but it's probably in like 9 months. And I had thousands of dollars of pre-orders, and I was
Holy
like,
cow.
shut
Okay.
up. No way. But it was at the end of this novella that was really emotionally stirring for them, and I knew it would
Yeah.
be. And so I was able to just capitalize on that and then get that instant feedback. And I was like, how interesting. Like 9 months, they didn't even care. They knew I hadn't written it and I did not have decision on what or how it would be. I couldn't even give them like an idea of the content and they still wanted it anyway. So that was super interesting data. Like,
That that is really interesting. It's almost like I follow a lot of course content creators, obviously. And so like they've done stuff like that where it's like you ask the question in your groups or whatever, like, would you buy this thing? I'm thinking about creating this course. Like if I put it up for pre-order or whatever, would you purchase it? This is kind of the vague idea I have, but other than that, I have no clue. And if they start to like obviously come over or start to pre-order, you know that there's some traction there. They do the same
mhm.
sort of thing. So that's really interesting. I never thought to do that with my books. Huh.
Well, and the behavior that you can have them actually do, because like I said, like, if you can drive behavior instead of, like, approval or just them saying they'll do it, the behavior could even be, like, subscribing, right?
Sure.
Like, sign
Yep.
up for this special list, and only updates for this book will go to this list. Does that make
Ah.
sense? So
Yep,
then you're
yep,
not making them pre-order, but they have to, like, engage something to
yep,
show, like, they have some behavior that then shows they're interested, right?
for sure.
So, yeah, there's a lot of ways to play with this. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's super cool. Do you typically reach out to them through like a reader group or your email list? How do you get them to respond to your survey? Like, how does that part work?
So both, but email is always king because I own that,
Yep.
right? So I drive everything through email, and then we have a Facebook group called The Witchery.
Okay.
It's a place in my fantasy world, so we titled the Facebook group that to kind of make them feel at home. So we post things through there, and then we post on Instagram and Facebook to like my fantasy page on Facebook, but really mostly we drive through email in the Facebook group.
That's super cool. I love
Yeah.
that.
And
Nice.
I do Zoom calls. I call them Coffee with Katie. And we do it Friday at noon Mountain Time. And then I have a live writing with Katie where they can come watch me write for an hour every Monday night. And they vote for short stories that they want that take place in my fantasy world. And I write those short stories only on those calls so they can watch it develop. And
Oh,
then we record
cool.
the audiobook together. So a lot of the times, if we have new initiatives or things coming through, I use that platform to really push it to the in-person people because there's something about like talking face to face about it
Yep.
that really drives it home, so we communicate a lot through there. So I'll be like, "Hey, the reader's request form is live, like, go throw your ideas in, what do you want?" And then they'll go do it, and I'll just drop the link in the Zoom chat or something.
Was it always really popular from the get-go, or did it take time to kind of get the readers to realize that, yeah, you're going to be here, you're doing this thing, like engage with it?
I think the overall trust, you mean, like, with the
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, trust takes time, right? I'd say it probably was about 6 months when people started realizing, oh, Katie's, like, serious. So at the beginning of 2022, I said, "We're gonna do a book a month. I'm gonna have a book a month for you." And some of those were novellas, right? In 2022, I was figuring out my process, trying to figure out if I could do it. What did it look like for systems in my team? How did I set up standard operating procedures, that kind of stuff. But I produced a new novel every 3 months and then a novella every month.
Okay.
And at about 6 months, when I was consistently launching the first Friday of every month, they were like, "Oh, okay." So I kind of noticed behaviors like stabilize
Mm,
where they were buying every month, they were showing up, they were responding. And then at the beginning of this year, I announced I would be doing a new novel every month. So like a 70 to 90,000 word book the
wow.
first Friday of every month. And by now, people just know like the first Friday, Katie shows up in my inbox. She has without fail for over a year. And then that like spills to other things. And what I noticed was people were more willing to share my stuff with other people because they knew my niche, right? I was
Yep.
fantasy. And well, it took me a while. I hung on to both a contemporary romance series and fantasy for a while, but I didn't like being split and it didn't feel good and I wasn't serving my romance readers the way they deserved, and so I just cut that off and I've moved to just full fantasy focus. So they know like my niche, they know how to share me, they know how to refer people to me, they know how to like who should come into my world and how. And so it seems like once I built their trust, the word of mouth really started picking up because they knew that they could honestly say to people, she does a book a month, like you're gonna
Right.
be able to do this. So
What is it? Now I got to understand your system. Like you've got the two young kids, you're writing a book a month, 70 to 90,000 words. How do you do it? Because I know people on here are going to be like, how is she making that
I know.
happen?
I know, I get a lot of people that are, like, jaw dropping. It sounds really crazy and really daunting, right? Like, it seems like a big deal, but first of all, I've been, like, published for almost 10 years, so I've been slowly
Yep.
figuring out my process for a while. I cannot emphasize this enough, I love writing. Like, I just love being in Alcara, which is my fantasy world, and I love stories. Right? So there's power in stories that supersedes all of us. And I love tapping into that and I love the puzzle. So I'm a big fan of the actual work, which
Yep.
makes a huge difference when you actually
Yeah.
love to write and edit, makes you want to work. And then I will sometimes write like at my computer. This is not, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on email. This is just, I set a timer and for 1 hour that timer goes and I'm doing nothing but writing anywhere from 5 to 6 hours a day sometimes. Like yesterday, I
Sure.
wrote 14,000 words over the space of 12 hours. So
Wow.
there is a lot of just in the work time.
Yep.
It's something I've built up the ability to do over time. I've like listened to people that are smarter than me and I've taken their advice, like it has built up to what it is over time because that's who I wanted to be. Like that was what I wanted to put in the world and that was the vision I had for my company. And so I've moved toward that vision slowly. And I have a lot of safeties built in, right? So I have a 4 and a 7-year-old at home. So I have to be really, really efficient. So when I'm mom, I'm mom. And when I'm working, I'm working. So I have a babysitter over here for 3 hours today because I need to be away from them so I can actually work. And then as soon as I'm done with the 3 hours the babysitter gives me, I close my computer and I'm mom. And
Yep.
then summer is the worst for productivity, right?
I
Because
can relate.
daycare is all over the place and like, it was solstice yesterday, so we were trail running. So it's just there's a lot of so we like I have to work at night now, but during the school year I don't work in the evenings, but I have to in the summer because I'm catching up because I want to play with my kids. So it's about flexibility and efficiency. And I just know I have to write 10,000 words today, period. Or I have to edit 15,000 words today, period. It doesn't matter how
Yep.
that happens. That's just what has to happen today. And I just put myself on a schedule and I just do that goal every day, about 5 days a week during the school year and 6 days a week
That's
during
great.
the summer. And then I always take Sunday as my full day off.
That's super cool. And it's cool that you say it the way that you just did because, I teach manifestation. So to me it's, you make the decision, that's your starting point, and then you lock in the vibe and you keep
Mhm.
taking that inspired action until it's there, right? And so for you, you're going, "Okay, I have to get 10,000 words done today." That's your decision. You trust
Mhm.
that it's going to happen. You just keep going
Yep.
till it is. And it's like that's the process. That's the process every day over and over. I love that. That is
Exactly.
super
It's the
cool.
same thing, which
Yeah.
for some people that I talk to, they're like, "I would get so bored." And I'm like, "Really?" Because I'm like flying through this fantasy world and I'm like writing with dragons and there's nothing boring about writing these stories.
Right?
And it's different every day. Like yesterday, I had a very like my kids were at daycare, but then I had like to go to a doctor's appointment for my daughter. So like sometimes I just write in the car and I'm like, you know what? I just have to hit 10,000 words. So I'm going to write wherever I can write. And then I went for a run after dinner and playing with my kids, and then I came home and then I just, like, wrote for a couple more hours, and I went to bed, so it's like, I don't have like, it can move and breathe, like, it doesn't have to
Yep.
be so structured and regimented as long as you're just locking in that goal and then hitting it no matter what, and
I love
that's
that.
it's so simple, and you just do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, like, ad nauseum.
Yeah.
It's really not super sexy. Like it
But
really
it
isn't.
but it's super cool because it's all about that trust of course I can make this happen. Of course
Yep,
it's going to be a thing. Of course. It's like there's no
exactly. Like this
question.
will happen. Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. That's so cool. Have you played around with like trying to speed up, like either using dictation or AI or anything like any of the tools to help you write faster?
No, so I tried dictation when I had my daughter and I was breastfeeding, and I just could not wrap my brain around that. Maybe I was too
Same.
distracted, like trying to like help her breastfeed and like talk out this dragon story. It just wasn't working for me.
Sure.
Um, but and AI, like I'm curious about AI, but to me, I'm a plotter and a pantser. I'm very much middle of the road. So I have whole stories plotted out, but then I pants the scenes.
Yep.
So the AI would take out the funnest part for me.
Yeah.
Like if I were to prompt it and then get something, then I would just be editing it, and figuring out from there. I can see the value of AI as a prompter. If I'm stuck somewhere, it could just kind of give me something to look at to move around. But for me, the I get the joy and the discovery of, oh, this connects over
Same.
here, and oh my gosh, this is what this looks like, blah, blah, blah. And like there's so much joy for me in that. And then there's joy for me when I edit and it polishes and it cleans up and the words are so pretty and you find the exact phrase, and there's joy in that for me too. So I stay pretty solid with that. But I do track. So I usually when I can, I set a timer and then I see how many words I wrote or edited in that hour, and then I
Sure.
just watch for trends, and usually there's like a slow, steady upward trend. I can first draft an average of 3,000 words an hour, and it used
Wow.
to be closer to 2,000, and sometimes I hit 3,700. So then I kind of
Yep.
watch for trends just because it's interesting to see. Um, but no, those are the joyful parts for me. What I found is I actually cleaned up everything else that was inefficient and just made more time for writing.
I
So
love it.
unsubscribing from only emails that are emails that are necessary only. Like I unsubscribe from everything else, or I have a different account for those. I have a timer. I'm only on Facebook for 10 minutes, and I go to the business suite so that I don't get distracted by the feed. I don't have the Facebook app on my phone. Like that kind of stuff where I can shave off all of these decision points or all of this time that I don't waste. And it's amazing how many hours a day you
Oh,
open
for
up when
sure.
you're not opening up email.
Yep.
Like, it's
Yep.
because if you're drafting and then you go check your email, your brain switches and there's so much lost time in that. And then trying to switch back to email. I used to think that was a bunch of crock, but now I'm like, there's so much you lose when you're like task hopping.
Yep.
So I do all of my business stuff at the beginning of the day or sometimes at the end of the day, depending on my goals. Like today, I was like, I have to get these specific 5,000 words written because I have 15,000 I have to edit. So I had a very clear goal before I went to bed, what had to happen today. So I didn't even open email or anything else. I just went right to writing in my early morning hours time, and I got all of that done. And then I engaged in email, and I'll have to finish it tonight after the writing's done. So
Sure. That is so cool. I love that so much. It's like the whole concept of it is just it makes so much sense in my brain as to why it's working for you and why the whole process is so like spot on. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic.
oh, good. Good.
I used to write a lot more like in those breathing moments, like you called it, that when my kids were younger, and now it's more like, okay, morning time is for this is that, and so I will batch those times so that
Mhm.
my brain is in that zone of doing the one thing and one thing only, and then you move to the next thing, because it's so true. It takes, I think they've done multiple studies on the multitasking aspect of it. It takes 21 minutes on average for a brain to get into the flow of whatever it is it's working on.
Yeah,
And the second a kid interrupts, or the second you check your email, or the second you go to Facebook, you've lost the momentum of it. And now you
yep,
have to get back into that 21 minutes all over again. And so, yeah, if you have
absolutely.
that time frame just to get yourself moving, that's the way to go, because then you're not distracting it constantly. It's
I
so
think
cool.
authors feel that so deeply too, because we'll go from
Yeah.
like parenting or exercising or working or whatever it is we're doing, and then we're like standing at like staring at a blank screen, and it's like, oh, it's so hard to like drudge up these words, especially if you've been like flipping through Instagram watching funny reels. Like, how do you like get into a fantasy world that's medieval, right? So I think
Yeah.
authors more than anyone can appreciate that time gap. For me, I have found that if I am mentally focused on my first draft and then I like take a physical break, like I step away from the computer, run to the bathroom, grab a snack, come back, that's not hard for me to switch back in. Or if I like go for a run and I come back, I can switch right back into the story because it's like my brain is still engaged in the story in a specific way. But if I
Yep.
try to engage my brain differently, like with
Mm.
email or posts
Yep.
or like different stuff like that. For some reason, it is really hard to get back into writing.
I wonder if it's that decision fatigue, like you were just talking about. I don't
Maybe.
remember if it was in the podcast episode or before we started, but we were talking about decision fatigue. And I think parents in specific have a really hard time with this because they're constantly dealing with questions all day long, normal
Yeah.
questions for normal everyday life. And then you're doing it for your writing. And so maybe it's part of that where it's like now all of a sudden your brain engages in a decision or a conversation it has to have, which is completely outside the world you're writing in.
Hmm.
And so now you're using a different part of your brain, you're using different synapses. And so
Yeah.
it's just,
That makes
yeah,
sense to me. Yeah.
yeah, same. Okay, now I gotta, this is my question. So because I'm super
Yeah.
interested in this, right? So you've said that you work in with Shopify, and
Mhm.
I'm so curious as to like what was the decision with Shopify versus like say WooCommerce, and like what do you see as the benefits of Shopify?
So for me, it was simplicity, right? I,
Okay.
I had like kcrosswriting.com was my old domain. I had that for a long time. And I just didn't want to like figure out putting WooCommerce on there. I mean, I buzzed around a little bit, but once I saw Shopify, it just seemed like so no brainer to me because you could put your Facebook pixel on there, you can open up a Pinterest channel. It's such a big company. There's so many ways to access it and all the apps that funnel to it and the dashboard was just really easy. Like it all just came really easily to me. And then you can buy the domain for like $19 a year through Shopify and have access to all the DNS and backend stuff. And then that just became my website. So I eventually just phased out my old one and everything is run through the store, which I love because then I'm just shunting to this platform that's really easy all of this like SEO juice, right? I'm not fighting with myself. It's all going
Yeah.
to the store. And I like that because I had WordPress for a long time and it was fine, but it sucked up a lot of my time just figuring out all of the like stuff behind it, right? And all the updates and blah blah blah. So that sucked up more attention than Shopify ever has, and there's just so many apps now and so many app developers that you can just add on, like, you can add reviews, you can add, like, frequently bought together is a really cool app. There's just so many that you can add and, like, just diversify and create new funnels and new things that was really easy on Shopify.
Are there any apps in specific that you think all authors should utilize
Yes,
other than
so
obviously
there's
frequently bought together?
frequently bought together for sure. Judge Me, I have for my reviews. People can put reviews. There's, I think it's Honeycomb for funnels. That's really, really good.
I think
I
I remember
really
you
like
talking about that one
Honeycomb
at
for,
Anchors. Yeah.
yep, Honeycomb for funnels is really good. Those three are sort of like your trifecta, just to give the people what they want. Like people do want to write and see reviews, and you can train people to eventually write from your website over time or to review on your website over time. I've tried some other apps that I just didn't love as well. Those are the ones that really come to mind the most. I'm just gonna look really quick because it lists some. Oh, there's different. I also use Lulu Direct for my paperbacks, so that they have an actual app on there that makes it really easy to access. And then another good one is there's a bunch of print on demand for merch, right?
Oh,
So like you
cool.
can like just upload a design and like create t-shirts and then like you get half and the print on demand company gets half and then they drop ship for you. So it's like POD paperbacks but for merch.
And
So
which
those
company is
are
that?
I use T-Launch, but
Okay.
I'm sort of waffling. I might go to someone else, but they've been
Sure.
okay. Some
Okay.
of their backend, it's like not supported on Shopify something. I don't know if they just need to update something, but there's been a few little quirks that I'm like, I use it
Who,
so
who's
infrequently.
the
I have
one that you're looking at then?
there's a couple. I haven't actually chosen one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Some people have told me
Just
about
thinking.
Printify. Yeah, I've heard
Okay.
I've heard good things about Printify. And when I first like looked at this, I had someone else recommend T-Launch to me. When I first looked at it, I had like shopped the App Store for a bunch of them, and there were a lot. Like, and they all have like reviews and like trials and all this kind of stuff. But I've heard good things about Printify too. So, so yeah, I
Cool.
like that Shopify just makes it easy to do things, and you can have blog posts or pages or videos that are embedded. You can do just about anything you want to make it look really, really amazing.
I love that. Is there a way to be able to pull, like, if you have let's say you're in, all in right now into Amazon, can you pull reviews from Amazon over to the store,
Mhm.
or do they have to like come over to your store and specifically
No,
put them
you
in?
can scrape it. Yeah, you can
Okay.
scrape it off Amazon. That's legal. And then I had my IT guy that worked for me at the time. he scraped the reviews on Amazon and then pulled them over to judge me and put them on. I have no idea how he did it.
Oh,
Like, I was, like, trying to get him to do standard operating procedure over it, but, it just fell through the cracks so that we could do it later. But I think it just says, I think maybe it says on the reviews that they're from Amazon or something. I'm not
okay.
sure how that works. But yeah,
That's
you
cool.
can scrape reviews from Amazon and put them over, at least through the Judge Me app, when I first started using it a couple years ago. I haven't tried updating it since.
That's awesome though. That at least gives like readers and the obviously the authors another way to be able to get people to see that look, this isn't to like just to like a book that someone just randomly puts out there. This has got reviews. This
Yeah.
has got some, reader interest already. And so now we're moving over to our own store. We're doing our own thing, but it's the same book.
That
So
social proof is really powerful. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. That is super cool. So how do you, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but how do you encourage readers to find you and your books and then purchase directly from your author store? Like what is it that you do then?
So the main thing is that I don't ever share any other retailer link. The only time that lately we have done that is sometimes when we have a new book go on Audible, we'll put it on Facebook and we're just kind of testing to see, do people actually click on this? Like, what's going on here? Do people go to Audible? Like, if we don't have advertising dollars behind it, it's more been a test than anything. But other than that, there's no other option. I'll say to people, like, this is available on all retailers, like at the back of the ebook, like where I have a
Sure.
list of books, that kind of thing. But on my newsletters, my social media, it always goes just to my website. And
Smart.
if people ask for a link, it just goes to my website. And, people will say, "Are you on Amazon?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm on Amazon. You can find me there." And I'm there and I'm easy to find there and it's organized there. I just don't provide that sort of juice to them. And
Mm,
there are some people that probably do leave and don't buy from me, but most of the people that really matter are buying straight from me because they get a discount, because I can add value really easily, and it's a much more fun shopping experience than, like, at Amazon where you're just getting blasted with ads everywhere.
right.
The other thing that I do is I figure out the really highly valued stories that readers want, because at the end of the day, they just want more books, right? Like, most people aren't gonna really care as long as they can open it up and read the book in a good manner. So I just figure out, if that's what they want, that's what our readers want, and their behavior shows that they're gonna buy it, how do we add value in a way that they can't say no, right? That's really
Right.
like the secret behind driving sales. Like, how do you add value in such a way they can't say no? So I just write more stories, but I write the ones they really want. So I'll sculpt my novel in a way that there's a subplot that does resolve, but maybe it resolves in a way that isn't super clearly seen, that the
Sure.
readers would be like, I want to know what happened, like
Right.
exactly what happened, right? So then I have that story written, and at the end of the book on the retailer, I'll say, if you want to hear how this went, just click right here. And it goes right to my store. And I'll say, this is the only place you can buy this, is right here. It's only 99 cents or $1.99 or $2.99 or whatever it is. And I get those first time purchasers all the time. And then what happens is they'll be like, oh my gosh, there's all these other stories I didn't know were here, because they just found me on Amazon. And then
Right.
I will see like high orders, like $80 to $150 orders, where people just go through and get all of the books that are only on my website and buy them all at once, right?
Wow.
So then I've
Holy moly.
made a customer of them and they'll stay with me.
Yeah.
And then I do awesome customer support. So for a while I had a customer support VA that's all she did. I do my own customer support now because we have honed it and like perfected it to such an art that it's very rarely I have a problem with customers, and most of the time they've just used the wrong email address when they order. That like autofill puts a different email and they don't see it and they don't get their book and they're upset. And I'm like, well, there was no order. What other emails do you have? And it takes like 2 minutes, right? So I don't even have to pay for a customer support VA these days because we've just honed it and perfected it. But that awesome customer support and emailing directly with me also gets people really excited. Like, I get readers all the time, they're like, "This isn't actually Katie, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's me." And then they like fangirl over email, right? They just, like, get really excited, and that's where they really start understanding, "Oh, like, she's here talking to us."
This is
And
an
then they
actual
find out, "Oh,
business?
like, I can talk to her on Zoom?" Like, that's so cool, and then we become friends, and that's where that relationship really starts.
That's so cool. Now I'm gonna have to go back to that in a second, but you mentioned Lulu for your paperback books, but do you use like BookFunnel or some other place to be able to
Yes.
deliver the ebooks then?
BookFunnel and Lulu are my 2 delivery services. So BookFunnel delivers the ebooks and audiobooks, and I cannot sing their praises high enough. And then Lulu does my print on demand paperbacks, and I absolutely love everything about them. So they make it so easy for me to run this, honestly. Without them, I'd be lost.
I love it. I love it. I know Lulu was at InkersCon as well, and I
Yeah,
wish I would have gotten the chance to sit down and speak with them. I'll have to reach out to them
they're
and
so
be like,
fun.
"Hey guys."
Yeah, Sarah would love it. You should reach out to her. She'd love it.
I will definitely do that. So when it comes to like that engagement and all the ways that now the readers understand it's you and oh my gosh, I can talk to her. Like, did the traction build? Like, did it start kind of slow and trickle, or was it pretty instantaneous because you were only sending them directly to your store and getting that going? Like, how did that
Oh,
look?
it's a trickle. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I
Okay.
had established audience. Like I had an email list that were motivated to buy, but it still took a while to start seeing those orders come in on those back titles where they all of a sudden understood, oh, there's a lot of these, right? Like,
Right.
because when you have as many titles as I do, then it's a question of, well, how do I communicate these to the reader in a non-overwhelming way? My fantasy world is Alcara. There's over 55 titles there. How do you
Right.
put those in front of people, you know? So we've experimented with like reading order lists and like certain segmentation and email follow-up and that kind of stuff. So I think the process of like pulling them in and doing that built the trust, and then it just slowly started rolling because once they came into my website and they saw I had all this other stuff for them and that they loved it, then they wanted to stay. But it is hard data to track, right? Like I don't go through
Right.
every single order and figure out was this your 5th order or your 10th order. But what I have noticed is that names pop up over time. If I just kind of skim my orders list, I start recognizing people and I'll kind of click and be like, "Oh, this is their 25th order." Or I'll have like a $150 order land and I'm like, "Oh, sweet. Who bought from me?" right? And so I'll go look and it'll be first time order, and then I can look at their titles and be like, "Oh, interesting." Audiobooks are big for binges. Like, I had an almost $300 order the other day come through, and it was all audio. Someone just, like, skimmed through and got all the audiobooks. So that was really cool. So, you know, you can kinda pull the data in and get an idea that way.
That's so cool. I just had to make a note because I'm like, I don't want to forget this. Is it easy for like when people are coming to your store, is it easy for them to buy all? Like, you know how Amazon has like the series and you could be like, oh, buy all four of the books from this series or,
Mhm.
whatever. Is it easy on Shopify to buy all?
That's what the frequently bought together is great for. 'Cause then
Ah,
you can
okay.
just they can hit buy all for that, or, you know, they're
Nice.
just adding stuff to cart. I've actually found that a lot of my readers like to browse, and they like to study and, like, make sure they want this. They're very, like as consumers, their behaviors are more targeted than I expected. Because 'cause I'm like, I fly by the
Sure.
seat of my pants and everything. I'm like, "That book looks awesome, buy." Like, Chirp is my best friend. I'm just always, like, urge buying, like, $3 audiobooks off of them. So a lot of them are a little more targeted. They like that browsing, taking their time ability. And then other people who are just the people that are showing up for the monthly launch, they're just automatically buying whatever's on the frequently bought together button. And it's usually the book that's on sale and then the next two for pre-order. And
Ah,
then
very
they just
cool.
kind of buy that way.
Nice. That is really cool. So I'm curious too about, I think you mentioned like the automations behind the scene with your emails, right? That you have like if they
Mhm.
come into your world at a certain point, do you have a lot of different automations in the background to keep people engaged in the world?
I have tons of automations. I don't have as many marketing automations, like marketing
Okay,
geared. So I have
sure.
like a free ebook, a free audiobook. I have like variants of those that we've tested over the years. I used to do a ton of A/B testing on like my opening sequence and testing it out and stuff. But you know that always changes. The market changes. You kind of have to roll with it and stuff. So I have some of those. We've tried segmenting based on tagging. Like if they have these tags, then they would go to this they would get these other recommendations. So they've read if
Mm,
they have these tags, that means they've bought this series, so we can recommend this next series. Right? You know, like we have that kind
yep.
of stuff. But right now, I just was driving like I wanted a very simple, clean business model while I was like getting my kids into full-time school. Like, I was
Right?
like, "You know what? I have a very specific life I wanna lead right now, and while my kids are not in full-time school, this is how I can do that." And so I just made a really clean business model, so I don't have a lot of marketing funnels that I have to support right now. I have enough to grab the people that are interested, like, in ebook or audio, and, um, from, like, in the fall when my daughter will be in school full time, then and I'll have a couple more hours every day, I plan to take those extra hours I have and start building out more robust marketing systems and testing those out. So nothing too complex right now because my life just didn't support it.
Sure, but that's really cool. I love that. For me, it's the same kind of situation where, well, a little bit of like sideways stuff went down too. I had automations in the back end. I use MailerLite, and so I had all that. And then when MailerLite kind of shifted to a different business model and moved everything over and integrated, and then all of my automations broke. And so I'm like, ah,
No.
so I had to figure out how to get them all back up and running. So it's always very interesting to see like who's using them, how are they using it, what's the best way to engage. I'll be talking with Holly Darling as well soon, and so I'm going to be
Oh,
definitely
fun.
picking her brain. But it's just it's super interesting, and it's something that I'm going, okay, I'm going to have to rebuild these and get them back out. But I feel like I want to do something different and just have more fun with it for sure. So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Now I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But what do you think your key to success has been with direct sales?
Oh, my relationship with the readers, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all I'm building the business that they want, right? Like in the fantasy
Yeah.
world that they want. And so I think moving them to be the decision makers and like they don't know that necessarily. I mean, they wouldn't be surprised
Sure.
to hear me say that, but and there are obviously decisions I make, but letting them really dictate like what do you want and when do you want it and what feels good. I think that relationship and building that trust is the absolute key. I mean, I know tons of people that are making millions of dollars in direct sales, in a different model, and they love it, and they're not as connected because that just doesn't work for them. I
Hmm.
think for me, with such a simple skeleton model, so that's the key here, is I have a very skeleton model so that I have time to write, because remember, it was all about the life I wanted to lead, and the life I
Yep.
wanted to lead was outside in the
Yeah.
mountains, right? And I wanted
Running
to
those
write
trails.
stories. Yes, I have trails to run, thank you. So it's like I had a very specific goal for my life, and that necessitated a very clean, simple business model, which to me is a delight because I don't have to think that much about it. Where I have run a very complex, like bigger model that made a lot more money but required a lot more of my time and attention, and I got a lot less time outside. So having such a clean, streamlined model built on my audience doing a lot of the marketing for me, that necessitates this sort of relationship with readers. But that I do want to be clear, like that's not going to resonate with everyone. There's going to be people who are like, I don't want to hop on Zoom. There was an author I spoke to at InkersCon. She's like, I write under a pen name, and I don't want them to know that I'm a woman of color. Like they think
Ah,
I'm probably just this white woman, and it would break my entire brand if I were
sure.
to reveal that. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's tough, right? Like
Right.
when you
Yeah.
aren't sure what they're gonna do. So there's like she wouldn't want a model like mine in the same way. Like I'm very like face forward, people see me. So
Yep.
it's gonna be a different model for everybody. But for me, the connection to the reader was required for me to run this clean business model, build trust, and be able to have those recurring sales every month to drive the cash flow.
I love that. So no, were they the ones that also kind of helped you make the decision about doing a book a month? Like, were they the ones that were requesting that, or was that your decision up front just to like build that consistency?
That was my decision to build the consistency because that's what my cash flow required. But
Okay.
I have asked them since, like, "Is this too fast? Would you want faster?" And of course, they're like, "We would read your grocery list, Katie. Like, we would read anything you wrote," right? So, like, because sometimes I launch a short story, about every 3 months, I launch a short story on the 3rd Friday or whenever it's available. So sometimes I do 2 launches per month. Those are, like, more subdued, and they're just like a fun cash flow injection. They're not anything I tried to build stability off of. So I made that decision, but I did that decision based on their behavior because they were showing these behaviors that when I launched books, I made money, right?
Right.
So it's like, well,
Right.
I want that money every month, and so that's what I started doing.
Super cool. What does your launch look like then? Like, how does that? Obviously, you have like the Zooms and everything. Your emails go out, but what does a launch look like to you?
Oh my gosh, my lunches are the best. So I schedule and automate almost every bit of it. Like I go on
Nice.
vacation during lunches because I do it so much now that
Right.
like it's pretty and part of the building trust thing that I did was I just made everything easy for my reader because none of us like to make decisions, right? So they aren't like I use the same subject line in the email for every launch. It says new book
Okay.
available today. So every time I have a new book, it's gonna be the same subject line and they know exactly what that means. And I
Yep.
get like a 40% open rate on it, right?
That's great.
So I make it really easy for them. And then I just have emails that go out. I sometimes offer a discount. I don't offer sales a lot because I want to reserve those for when I need them and so that they're special.
Yep.
So I have like a banner that I put up on the website. I have like towards the top below my subscribe, like offer, I'll have a picture of the latest release and a little description. I change that. And then we have social media posts, and then I do a coffee with Katie call that day. But really my launch is like a week or two before, when all of the final files for everything comes through. I schedule and finalize the launch a week or two before. So launch day is like a super like cool, we're launching. And then I just
Nice.
spend a little more time on social media. Like I'll do a reel for Instagram. I'm not really that good at it. Like I just like do a video where I talk. And I'll spend a little more time in the groups and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I have writing to do, like, and I
Yeah.
would really, it's normally we launch on Fridays, and normally by then it's like I kind of want to go play outside. So like
Right. Right.
just go do other
So
stuff. So my launches are subdued.
do you write ahead of yourself to the point where you're like a couple of books ahead, or do you
Mhm.
like write it and then launch it?
So I'm 2 months ahead. So I
Okay.
am writing the book that will come out in, I believe, in September. Yeah, I think so. I'm
Okay.
about 2 months ahead.
Got it. That
So
makes
the
sense.
book, I should be getting a book back today or tomorrow from both my title manager and my audio guy for the 1st of July. And then the book that launches in August will be going to my editors in a couple days, or like at the end of the month, and then I'll get that book. Yeah, so I'm about 2 months out.
That's great. Yeah, I think that helps too, where you're not feeling quite so stressed, like, oh my gosh, I need to like do all the things and get this stuff out and create all the things, and I'm not quite finished. And it's like, that creates a lot more undue
Yeah.
stress. And
I
yeah,
couldn't do it. I couldn't do it if I didn't have so much leeway. Like it's a very stress-free cycle, and
I
I
love that.
again built it that way on purpose.
For sure. Yeah. So do you have any advice for new, well, not necessarily new authors, but for authors who are new to direct sales to kind of like put their toes in, or where they should start? I mean, obviously you do, but like what would your advice be?
I think really the most important thing is to understand that it's going to start slow. Like it takes a while to build trust and to train your readers to buy from you. You have to train to buy from you. So, get your store set up, whatever, but consider offering higher value, not the same. So,
Okay.
if they can get it on Amazon and they're used to getting on Amazon, why wouldn't they just go to Amazon, right? But if there's something of high value that they can't get on Amazon and they really want it, is there like a scene that you can't cover, or like a short story or novella, anything that you can at least put on your website and say the only place you can get it is here, and just be really confident and say, this is going to give, like, I'm doing this because this is a better experience for you, which is true, right? This is
Yep.
totally true. We're doing this because you can give them more this way. And I've been
Yep.
really honest. Like, I don't like necessarily bash Amazon, but my readers understand that Amazon is not in it for me and I am not in it for them, and that's fine, right? Like,
Yep.
we don't have to be buddies. So my readers understand that, and they're very supportive. They're like, we want, oh, like, we want to buy popsicles for your kids with this money. So I would start by consider adding value instead of just cheaper versions of what you already have. It's good to have your books for less than they are in the retailers, but you want to draw them in with something they can't get anywhere else. Maybe for your audience, that's t-shirts or coffee mugs, or maybe there's some joke you can make between your books and what you offer, right? Like I have, oh my gosh, I have these readers that are convinced that this dragon of mine, they're like, he didn't die. I was like, you guys, he died. Like he was in a death spiral. He was like plummeting from the air and there was fire around him. Like his name is Elis. I was like, I'm sorry, you guys, Elis died. And they were like, you don't know that, because I always say, I'm not in charge. Like, I'm always like, look, I'm not in charge. Alcara is in charge. It'll come to me. I'm just the person that gets out of the way and then the stories come, right? So I always say Alcara is all of ours. So they've like taken that to the next level. Like, you don't, like, you're not in charge. Alcara is in charge. And Alcara is going to reveal to you in the next Bianca series that Elis is alive. So they've started this Elis Lives petition. Like every copy with Katie, this comes up. And I wrote this book like last fall. Like it's been like 6 months. We're on to this whole new series and they're still talking about Elis. So I finally, as a joke, made these t-shirts that says Elis lives. And then I
Yeah.
made another one that said Elis dies, so that like the competing sides could choose what t-shirt they want. So they buy these t-shirts and they wear them to the Coffee with Katie call. I can't even make this up. Right. And
I
they're
love
like,
that so much.
right. So that's high value. Like they can't
Yeah.
get that on Amazon. They can't get that anywhere but my store.
So
And
cool.
that's the way to think about this,
Mm.
right? So think, what can you do that makes your readers part of your world? Because if your goal is like mine, you're really just trying to create a better, like a place for people to go when they need to find their courage again, right? You want to build
Yeah.
that escapism because that's why we all go to books. I
Yep.
think at the heart of us, we're all writing books for this purpose. So you want to find ways to make your store connect them to your world so that they always want to come back. So now I have Elis Lives, Elis Dies t-shirts. I take their favorite quotes and I put them on t-shirts or coffee mugs or whatever. Like I'll do that. But
Yeah.
mostly they're here for the stories, right? So find stories that are high value that you can start offering from your store nowhere else and then let that trust slowly build, right? And charge
Yep.
money for it. Like charge money for those stories. I know some direct sales authors are like, well, I'm not going to charge anything. I'm just going to make them go through the buying process for them to get used to it. It's like, you can do that, but like, let's train them that you're worth the money too. Right. So
Yep.
like a dollar
Yeah.
99, like behavior doesn't change all that much between 99 cents and a dollar 99 in my experience. When I test price points, the behavior of purchasing is almost exactly the same between the two, except in one you get a dollar more, which doubles your profit. So
Right.
like go for a dollar 99. So just
Right.
consider what are you training them to believe about your store and then go that way.
I love that. I just had a conversation with Only James, and she talks very similarly. Where, like, for her, she's more Patreon and merch, and so she does it from kind of that perspective. But it's the same kind of concept where it's like, think of all the way, like, think like the creative entrepreneur or the fangirl, and like, what would you want, from your world? How would you like to immerse people in it, and like, what ways can you get them excited about being a part of this like situation? And it's just, you're concretizing that in my brain, that it truly is, it's about creating that safe place where readers can come fangirl or fanboy out and like just have a really good time. And I think that's just
Exactly.
so key. That's so neat.
Yes, I think that's really everything. That's what drives this whole train.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love it so much. Okay, so do you have any resources available that might help new authors if they're looking to go direct or like want to exit KU and want to start doing the, like the wide and direct sales thing? And
Yeah, so I don't offer any author services right now. I don't have any plans to because I'm, just writing books and running in the mountains. But I really highly recommend Morgana Best. She has a really cool course. She has a lot of different parts to it. She's been doing direct sales for a really long time. I've talked to Morgana. I really like what she's doing. Um, I work with Joe Solari, and his book Advantage is a really cool, like, if you want to read or like get the audiobook for Advantage, that book helped me understand how to think differently about my audience, like in terms of I'm trying to make a family for them, right?
yeah,
And so that's
yeah,
a
yeah.
really good book to start thinking differently about your marketing. Bonnie Paulson is really good too. Like if you're looking for advertising help, I really like her if you're doing direct sales because you get so much more data with advertising when you do direct sales. Like
Oh, for sure.
you can do purchase conversion instead of just traffic, which is a game changer. I loved purchase conversion. So there's a lot of things that way you can do. There's a lot of people out there talking about this right now, which is really cool. There's no shortage of resources for people talking about direct sales. Those are just the ones that I personally know and would recommend.
Awesome. I love it. And I just ordered, because of you, I ordered Joe's books, Advantage. It is not, however, here yet. That book took forever to get here. It was like the longest. I ordered a bunch of books from the conference, and I like, they're all in the other room. So now I'm like, I have no idea what they were anymore. But Joe's is the one that I know that's taking forever, because I think it's supposed to be here like next week still. I'm going, what is taking
There's
so
like
long, Joe?
some weird shipping juju going on because like I don't know what's going on, but I had a book that like says it was delivered to Hawaii, but the post office can't find it, and the reader's contacting me. I was like, I don't know, so we'll send it again, but it's Hawaii, so it takes forever to get there. And then someone else was like, my book isn't here yet. It's been 2 weeks, and it was stuck in Montreal.
Like,
And
what?
then, like, there was something else, like, my mom just got, like, a package of gummy bears shipped to her that she didn't order, like, I just was like, "There's some weird juju in the world around shipping right now." Like,
Right? It must have been that like bipolar Gemini new moon. That's what it was. It was so weird.
something's going on.
It was super weird. We're all like, what is happening right now? Who are we? What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. It's weird.
I love it. Well, Katie, thank you so much for being on the show today. We've talked so much, and I know that my audience is going to be like, their brains are
Yeah,
going to be exploding right now. It's going to be amazing. I love it. I can't wait to get the emails from everybody, because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, that was
Oh, I'm
amazing.
so glad. Thank you for having me. It's a fun discussion, and you asked all the right questions. It's been really
I
fun.
love it so much. And you have so many great answers, and it makes me want to keep digging more and more. And so I'm definitely definitely looking into direct sales, and I'm going to test out Shopify. If not
Cool.
with my fantasy pen name, I'm going to definitely do it with the rom-com that I'm starting up and just start as a mean to go on and see how that
Yeah,
one
yeah.
goes.
I
Yeah.
like
So
that.
I'm definitely gonna play around with it and go find all the apps that you're talking about. It's gonna be great.
Well, it's fun too
So
because the more people are doing it, the more trained everyone is in general. So then it just creates
yeah,
more success, right? Like, especially with
absolutely.
romance. We need to train romance authors to get off KU. So the more we
Yeah.
have people building these stores and training people and building trust, it helps everyone across the board.
For sure. Well, and if I like Shopify, which it sounded like I probably will, I could see myself moving the fantasy side over as well. But for right now, it's like I just did all the work to get WooCommerce with audiobooks and everything linked. I'm like, we're gonna leave that
For
for just
sure.
a hot sec.
Yep, for sure. I totally get it.
But if I love it, which I probably will, then I can foresee next year being we're switching everything
Mhm.
over. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Okay, so where can everybody find you? Obviously, in your awesome books, when they're going, oh my gosh, I need to go check out this woman in Alcara.
Yeah, so go to katiecrossbooks.com. You'll see all of them listed there. You can get my first book, Flame. It's a dragon rider book in a medieval secondary fantasy world for free, both in ebook and audio. And if you have any questions, you can just email me. It's katie@kcrosswriting.com.
I love it. Thank you, Katie, so much for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you so much for having me.